Sunak. So Rishi Sunak, as you guys know, he's the prime minister of the UK. He actually is not having a good, I would say, past couple of months, actually. He actually just announced the UK general election. And a lot of people are pushing back on this because they feel like this is a big mistake. Obviously, Rishi Sunak is not well liked right now in the UK. And you can just see some of that through George Galloway's campaign, how he was able to win through the Workers' Party, not the Labour Party, right? Not the Tories. He was able to win basically through a third party. And that actually says a lot about how people in the UK are feeling right now this time. So the fact that he announced this election so soon, it feels rushed that he's trying to do this, right? So let's get into part of his speech on Downing Street where he decided to announce that. And then we're going to get into his poll results right now and a little bit more from how people in the UK feel about this. And George Galloway has some things to say about it as well. Rishi Sunak is now announcing the general election for July 4th. Too soon? Let's see.
In the last 5 years, our country has fought through the most challenging time since the Second World War. As I stand here as your Prime Minister, I can't help but reflect that my first proper introduction to you was just over 4 years ago. I stood behind one of the podiums, upstairs in the building behind me. I told you that we faced a generation-defining moment and that we as a society would not be judged by some government action, but by the small acts of kindness that we showed one another. You met that challenge, and then some, and I have never been prouder to be British. And when I introduced the furlough scheme, I did so not because I saw a country simply in need of desperate help, albeit we were, but because I saw a country whose future hung in the balance. I could be bold and trust in the tens of millions of you at home that you would rise to the moment, or I could accept the inevitable millions of job losses and pick up the pieces. In truth, it was no choice at all. I have never and will never leave the people of this country to face the darkest of days alone. And you know that because you've seen it.
So just a little bit of background information about Rishi Sunak. Barack Obama visited him recently, which we all thought that was kind of strange considering Obama is no longer president of the United States, and particularly considering what's going on in the Middle East and also George Galloway winning his election, et cetera, right? But Rishi Sunak is another neocon. He is very, very wealthy, and not because he's from being prime minister. He was already wealthy. A lot of people say that he was kind of handpicked by the establishment, right? So he's someone that is put into that position to basically do the bidding of the establishment. Like that's what Rishi Sunak is there to do. So the fact that someone like George Galloway was able to win through the Workers' Party, that is actually in a way the people in the UK pushing back on the type of politics that Rishi has been pushing. So Rishi Sunak is getting really nervous, and he's been this way ever since George Galloway won. I don't think he really knew how to take it, but this time he is up for an actual election, right? So the people will actually get to vote theirself. From what I understand before, he was not elected. I guess like with prime ministers in UK, it works a little bit differently. But this time around, it will be an actual election. And I don't think he's going to win. We'll get into that a little bit later.
As I did then, I will forever do everything in my power to provide you with the strongest possible protection I can. That is my promise to you. Because for so many of us, it's easy to forget the scale of what we've been through. We were hit by a pandemic that upended normal life. Who would have thought that the government would ever tell us how many times a day we could leave our homes? Then, just as we were recovering from COVID, war returned to Europe, with Putin's invasion of Ukraine sending your energy bills spiraling. I came to office, above all, to restore economic stability.
So you notice how he had to throw that part in there, right? He had to mention that Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, and that's what caused the energy prices to spiral. I kind of disagree with that. I would say what caused the energy prices to spiral was obviously blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. And hasn't this been debunked multiple times that obviously Russia did not blow up their own pipeline? I mean, Seymour Hersh wrote a very excellent article about the Nord Stream. And the gray zone actually went to the ocean and found a boot, which basically appears to be like a Navy boot. You know, obviously did not come from Russia. So it was very obvious. This has been already debunked that Russia did not blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. But notice how he's still repeating the mainstream media narrative, which is that the reason why the energy prices are so expensive in the UK is because he invaded Ukraine. No, they're expensive because either the United States or Ukraine, I'm more willing to lean towards the United States, according to Seymour Hersh's article, blew up that pipeline. Let's go on.
Economic stability is the bedrock of any future success, whether that is rising wages and good jobs, investment in our public services, or the defense of the country. And because of our collective sacrifice and your hard work, we have reached two major milestones in delivering that stability, showing that when we work together, anything is possible. Our economy is now growing faster than anyone predicted, outpacing Germany, France, and the United States.
And we have to pause here because this is another thing that happens sometimes when he's speaking. People will start to blast music or they'll start yelling at him. And we're just going to fast forward to the part here where he mentions the election. I thought that was really funny. It's also interesting, too, because like here, when there are announcements with our president, these announcements are done usually inside of a building. But in the UK, the prime minister walks out into the street and makes these speeches. So obviously, you're going to fight with the noise there. I think this is the part here where he makes the announcement.
Foundation into a secure future for you, your family, and our country. Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future, to decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty. Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament.
So he went to speak to King Charles. So he basically got some type of permission from him. And this is another thing I've noticed, too, that you'll see if you guys have ever watched the show, The Crown. You'll see this multiple times where different prime ministers throughout history would actually go to the queen and get her permission to do certain things, even though they are the prime minister. I guess it's kind of seen as a respect thing that they would want to have the queen or the king's wishes before they proceed with some type of path, right? So he did go to King Charles to ask him this, and here we go.
The king has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
Okay, so the general election will take place on July 4th. Interesting date. I don't know. Just an interesting date. Especially, I do feel that this is somewhat rushed, and I want to show you why. If you're going to see his polling numbers, you would assume that now is probably not the best time. July 4th is just around the corner, you guys. It's not that far away. We're going to take a look at his polling numbers here. This is from Statista. Which of the following do you think would make the best prime minister? Now, this was April 20th through May 24th, but I want to show you where he is right now. So the light blue line, that's Boris Johnson. You know, he's not. And then the dark blue line, which was very, 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 very short, a very short stay there from Liz Truss as prime minister. And then, of course, Rishi Sunak comes in here. Now, October 26th of 2022, you'll see that his approval rating was at 30%. That was actually high for him. But now the numbers show you Rishi Sunak is polling at 18%. I'll see if I can make it just a little bit bigger for you guys to see. There we go. Okay, right here. Rishi Sunak is polling at 18%. 18%. That is terrible. And we thought Joe Biden had a low approval rating. That is absolutely terrible. And now he wants to go ahead and try to rush to have an election. I think there could be some type of strategy here. I think he may think that if he waits even longer, his polling numbers could decrease even more. I don't know, but that is a terrible position to be in at this point in time. Desert Mantis says Sunak is in the Biden zone. He's in the zone, all right. Get in the zone, auto zone. He's in the zone, but this is terrible. Jeez Louise. And of course, we can see here Keir Starmer, who is leader of the opposition. He's polling at 33%. Either way, neither one of them have a good polling percentage at this point in time, which again shows you the people want something different. The people in the UK want something different. Think about it. When George Galloway won, he didn't just win. It wasn't close. George Galloway won by a landslide through the Workers' Party. So the people of the UK have spoken. They want something different. I'm going to keep track of these poll numbers for Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, because it'll be interesting to see if a third party were to emerge or whatever. It will be interesting to see what will happen there. But I will say, I just think that that is embarrassing. It is embarrassing to be the prime minister and to have an approval rating of 18%. That is really bad. And also, even Sky News is calling out Rishi Sunak, thinking that this is a good idea. Sky News disagrees. They're like, why are you doing this? Let's get into this.
A prime minister well behind in the polls, choosing to call an election before he had to. All of Westminster asking the same question. Why now? To answer that, you need to go back in time to January of last year. Rishi Sunak setting out his 5 pledges to the nation.
I will only promise what I can deliver, and I will deliver what I promise.
Doesn't he sound like a puppet to you guys? He sounds like a hand-picked puppet, right? Looks very fake.
5 promises on the economy, the NHS and immigration, the themes to win voters back to his beleaguered party. Today, the PM gambling that he can claim enough of the progress he needs. Recent good economic news, the real driver behind his decision. A morning announcement that inflation is finally back to normal levels, seized on across government as evidence their plan is working.
We are back to target, back to a time before the international crises of COVID, of the war in Ukraine.
We're not back. We're 20% higher than we were in 2021.
Well, inflation is back to 2.3%, which is near target. And so we're back to that sort of normality.
So did you guys hear that? So the inflation, at least for the UK, not for us here in the United States. I went to the grocery store earlier today. I don't even want to tell you the prices that I saw. And I saw a picture on Twitter from Kim Iverson, where she was at the grocery store and she took a picture of a container of strawberries. It was like $19.99. That's insane. Granted, she's in California, but still, that is freaking insane. But apparently in the UK, inflation has started to decrease. And I think he's trying to seize this opportunity. Inflation has decreased. The people have got to come out and support me. I don't think it's going to work that way, Rishi.
Immigration plans are in place for flights to take off to Rwanda this summer. But a July election means we won't know if the boats have actually been stopped. It's a window of opportunity that Rishi Sunak has chosen to seize, but his party isn't convinced.
Tory MPs are far from happy at the election decision, believing that Rishi Sunak has put his interests over theirs. They know that they are marching towards the sound of machine gun fire, but have no option but to put their fate in his hands.
There'll always be people who say we should have waited a bit longer, or some will still say he should have gone in May when we had the local elections. This is the date he's picked, and all of this will be swept aside now. Colleagues over the next few days will be returning to their constituencies, writing their election literature, getting their campaign grid up, and actually they will be working 150% for the next 42 days to be returned in their seat.
So they don't really think this is the best idea. So it almost kind of sounds like Rishi Sunak is the David Ruffin of the Temptations. Some of the younger people in the chat may not know. David Ruffin of the Temptations. He's seriously, so David Ruffin, you know, he was kind of one of the stars of the Temptations, and the fame kind of went to his head a little bit. And he was like, you guys would be nothing like without me. Actually, in the movie, he said, y'all's mama's boys. Y'all would be nothing without me. You can't stop David Ruffin. What does it say? Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. If you guys haven't seen that, you got to see the Temptations movie. You got to watch the Temptations movie. But anyway, he's kind of like the David Ruffin of Temptation. He's just doing his own thing. And he's just like, whatever. I don't care if we're going to lose or not. I'm going forward with this because inflation is starting to decrease and I'm going to do what I want to do. Meanwhile, the other members of the party, the other members of the Temptations or whatever, they're just kind of like, what are you doing? We're not ready for this. So Rishi is just going solo and doing his own thing. And we know what happened to David Ruffin.
Thousands of miles away, the devastation in Gaza is an issue for voters here too. Recent elections have shown pro-Palestinian independence eating into Labour's vote. Ministers think that scenes like George Galloway's shock Rochdale win could repeat in the general election too. Labour watching closely.
Yes. So you see, this is what they're afraid of. To them, George Galloway was not supposed to win. So when George Galloway won with the Workers' Party, that was a shocking moment for both of those parties. So now they're afraid that the people are sending a message that we are more aligned with the type of policies that George Galloway talks about and supports, and not what Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer are talking about. So they're afraid that this is also going to have an impact in the general election. So I think they're trying to go ahead and get this over with as soon as possible, as if the people will forget. So they said it has Labour very afraid that George Galloway was able to win.
We are fighting for every single vote in this general election. We take no vote and no community in any part of our country for granted. This general election is a chance to change the government of our country, and the Labour Party has a plan to change our country.
The Prime Minister is gambling his office on persuading the nation they can't afford change. Keir Starmer hoping caution and reassurance enough to get him through the door to number 10. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Yeah. Things are changing in the UK. And another thing, too, you know, it's not uncommon for if something in reference to politics, if something is starting to happen in the UK, it's kind of a sign of what could be to come for the United States politics, right? And vice versa, right? What did they say? 70% of American voters want a third party, want a third option. Okay, so and then you see what happened in the UK with George Galloway winning through the Workers' Party. So there is some similarities here when you look at politics with the United States and with the UK. Sometimes these things tend to, you know, bounce from one side of the pond to the other. Biggity bounce. So George Galloway actually thought it was funny. He had something to say about this. This is hilarious.
And they're off and swimming. Like a drowned rat, Roland Rat, the captains of British capitalism blew their own election launch. They say they have a plan, but they didn't even consult the weather forecast. More splendid pictures of drowned Roland Rat, Rishi Sunak. Trips off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yeah, more people pushing back against the establishment, more people pushing back against the rich, like wealthy people. More people are pushing back against that. So these are interesting times. Rishi Sunak, I don't think you have a chance in hell. If you win, let me know, okay? Because if you win when you have only 18% support from the people in the UK, I need to know what kind of spell you cooked up. I need to know what kind of magic you made happen. But yeah, July 4th, general election for the UK. Should be interesting.